All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can I have roll call, please?
Mr. Antoine is here. Ms. Bonnick?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Dr. Demas?
Here.
Ms. Eichhorst?
Here.
Ms. Rice?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Present.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Motion.
Moved by Young, supported by Demas. Are there any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to celebrations. Dr. Robinson?
Busy time of year, so we have a lot to celebrate. Some examples for you this evening. Some celebrations from Hamilton Parsons. Hamilton Parsons students, staff, and families had a great time participating in their trunk or treat this year and other Halloween festivities. Some really neat costumes, even full families in costume. Mrs. Gary's class were the fun run winners and celebrated with Mrs. Van with some confetti poppers outside. They held a Leading with Joy parade that kind of combined a previous activity they did with our annual theme. So appreciative of how they're kind of leveraging that and taking that down to include the students. And then students enjoyed participating in their PBIS Be Respectful, Be Responsible, Be Safe assembly. Indian Hills, couple celebrations. Their student lighthouse team has been appointed for the 23-24 school year. And this team of student leaders from 2nd to 5th grade will work together with their teacher sponsor, and they'll guide the Leader in Me journey and lead the monthly Bulldog Roundup assemblies. The craft club has begun at Indian Hills, overwhelming interest. So a lot of fun going on there. 2 of the staff members has kind of volunteered to lead that club, and they already have a wait list for the second half of the year. So, so that's good news from Indian Hills. Continuation, I actually had the opportunity to see the Lighthouse team in action leading their first Bulldog assembly this past Friday, and they took the opportunity to honor some veterans, so some family members of students at Indian Hills, and they invited me, so grateful for the opportunity to participate in that. And it was a good, well-run assembly with little or no adult involvement. Washington Elementary Friday also held, I believe it was their second Caring School Community Assembly of the year. And they were recognizing students who were exemplifying the trait of self-awareness. In addition, they took the opportunity to pass their staff awards, this year's Joy Chains, and they passed those to 2 new staff members and allowed the kids to participate in the fun. Romeo Athletics, of course, we've all heard that we have a state championship girls cross-country team. I actually invited the girls to come tonight, and they have, I think, an all-county or all-region banquet or something this evening, so no shortage of celebrations for our team. So we have put it on the docket, and they will join us at our December meeting to get recognition from the board. Also had 4 of the runners this year, based on their finish in the state finals, earn all-state status. So we'll recognize those girls at the December meeting here in person. This past week, we had our annual CT Academy Advisory Board meeting that took place on the 9th, and it began with a really good dinner that was prepared by our culinary arts students, followed by a short presentation in large group with members of the high school leadership team and myself. And then the groups broke out into individual advisory committees. I think it was over 220 people at the event. So sometimes it's good to see the collective mass of support that we have in regards to the Academy's work. And happy to have the support of the county. Executive Hackle was there, and some other members of Economic Planning and Development. So a good evening. We got a lot of good feedback for our pathway teachers to integrate, and we'll continue the good work and look forward to our annual retreat in March. Some fall season highlights for the rest of our athletic teams. The volleyball team won the district championship. Unfortunately lost in the semifinals at regionals, but a good season for them. Alyssa Chambers was awarded swimmer of the meet at their MAC division meet, and she's actually advancing to the state finals, I believe, this weekend. So she, I think, is actually the last fall athlete we still have participating, and I'm seeing emails going out about winter tryouts already. So, and then congratulations to Julia Steichel, I believe it is, who advanced to the diving regionals at Bloomfield Hills. And that's our celebrations for tonight.
I have a quick question. You might not know the answer, but is the craft club at Indian Hills, I don't know if I'm going to ask it the right way, but come out of some of the strategic plan where we're getting more student voices and engagement in what they want? Is there any correlation with that?
I would say that's an additional student activity, Mr. Murray. And we'll hear a little bit more
Okay.
about that.
Perfect. Just thought it would be
Yes.
a nice tie to connect it. All right, moving on to presentations. We didn't have any. Consent action. Can I have a motion for? Young supported and Connor seconded. These are our general fund bills, our financial reports, wire transfer, purchasing card expenditures, and the minutes from our workshop meeting held on November 6th. Any questions? Comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to informational updates, communications. Doesn't look like we have any. Committee reports. The Finance Committee was a committee of the whole, so for those of you in the audience, we discussed some of our upcoming ballot proposals that you're going to be seeing us vote on tonight, and talked about where we're at with our bond issues as well. So nothing really to report there. Facilities, Mike, if you'd like to give an update.
Sure. Each board member received the minutes, I believe it was late on Friday that we got the minutes, or maybe even Saturday of this week. We talked about our 2021 Group 1 projects. We talked about that Hamilton Parsons is waiting final inspection, which is scheduled for November 22nd. Pending the occupancy permit, after Thanksgiving break, teachers can move into those classrooms. The Croswell project, the roof is on and it's watertight. Now they're going to be starting to work on the interior work for that project. We have two items tonight that's on for resolution, Resolution 89 and Resolution 90 regarding Group 2 projects. The first one is regarding the additions to Amanda Moore, Washington, and to Hevel for the STEM projects. They walked us through the bid tab, or Bart Mallow walked us through the bid tabs and explained to them how things were written and how things were awarded. And the committee spent some time talking about that, and that not all categories were awarded to one vendor, even though if they had gotten all categories, they provide a discount to the district. But it was Bart and Mal's understanding that, hey, we'll go with the low bidder if they are qualified based on the requirements that Bart Mallow has. So they're going to have to deal with some different contractors, not just one contractor, but they're going to have a couple of different ones in for several projects, which they're used to working with. So that was that. The next one that we talked about were the two baseball diamond, or moving the baseball diamonds over to the new campus here. And the amount of money that went over, all projects are, are exceeding the budget limits that that was determined for them. This particular project, there were a couple things that we had discussed. One is the site work, and the site work, just to do the site work there and where those diamonds are going to be placed, it costs additional money to prepare them, to get them ready, is one of the items. And then there was some discussion about the contractor performing the work. The contractor performing the work doesn't have as much experience as the next lowest bidder, which was a couple $100,000 more. So we decided that with Barton Mallow's expertise and some comments that they also had the architect foresight there talking to us, they didn't see any reason for us to go with the $200,000 more vendor, that this company could do the work. They just need to get more projects under their belt. And they have done projects and they have been successful. And we feel that as a committee that with Barton Mallow and their team on board, that they're not going to let anything go past us. So that was a discussion on that. And then,
So we are doing it?
Yes.
yeah. So then we heard from Mr. Storm on his director's report. He's reviewing the lawn maintenance contract, and we do have an option to extend that a year if we choose to. So he's working on that, as well as they're working on the contract for the custodians. And we're thinking about rebidding that out at this time. We do have an option to extend it a year. But we're thinking about, like I said, bidding it out and seeing what happens on that. And that's about it. That's it.
Mike, the page in our packet where it's a chart with the athletic field improvements, are the ones highlighted in green, I'm assuming the ones that they're going to.
And remember that baseball fields aren't just used for baseball fields. They can be used for other practice, the outfields, and for other types of sporting events or whatever else we may need outside.
Well, and the other important domino piece to the baseball fields is that's where the robotics center's going. So we need to relocate them from the current middle school, which was our high school, so that we can do the STEM robotics area.
Is there an updated timeline? I know it's because of, money and in cost increase, but is there a new timeline, or is it too early to even speak to that, Dr. Robinson?
Which?
For the baseball fields.
No, they're still, we're not behind on
Okay.
that. I mean, Mother Nature in
Right.
Michigan controls that
Okay.
ultimately, but the timeline would be to begin in the spring. We have to relocate the field events. The shot put and discus areas actually will be right in the middle of left field. So we have to relocate those over, closer to the high school building, probably first thing in the spring. There's a couple of concrete pads that have to go down for that. If we can get those in prior to winter, we will, pending approval of the board. And then I would guess with if it stays on timeline, it'd probably be just prior to right now, next fall, when they would be done, maybe a little bit earlier. So they'll be playable for the 25 season, but this spring will be at the current facilities.
Any other questions of the facilities committee notes?
So I've just listed what I believe is the balance of our committee meetings for this calendar year, and then we'll form a new schedule in that, revisit committees as an extension of the organizational meeting in January. I think that's it.
All right, moving on to 31AA grant.
So there's some reconfiguration in some of the state grant funds, really consolidation more than anything as a part of the approved budget last June. And we have an obligation to share those updates publicly and seek any public comment or input on what our planning is. So Mrs. McFarland's here tonight to kind of lead that conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. So we did receive funds under 31AA last fiscal year, and that was to be used towards mental health and wellness. As you can see, the other three grants that we received last year also touch a little bit upon what the current 31AA for the fiscal year 24 allows. So back in the 21-22 school year, we applied for 31O. It's alphabet soup and number soup tonight. You had to apply. We didn't get the funds until late March of 22. They were encouraging you to increase the number of school psychologists, school social workers, counselors, and school nurses. So in our initial application, we had wanted to secure 2 additional social workers and an additional school psychologist. We were not able to find a school psychologist at that time, so we just hired the 2 additional social workers, one for the middle school, one for the high school campus. And in that 31O grant, you were fully funded in the first year. Mind you, again, we didn't hire them until almost March. So we still got fully funded. Year 2, we received 66% of the annual cost. And then we're in year 3 currently. That's why the red star is over there. And we receive up to 33% of the annual cost for those 2 additional social workers. So we're riding out. Next year, we would have to fully fund them. Section 97 was around school safety last year. We utilized those funds for door hardware, the Raptor system, and the 2-way radio network and equipment. And it addressed more infrastructure needs than people or things. There was also a 97C and a 97D. And that was one-time funding. 97C was for risk assessment. So SEC came and presented, I believe it was last year, and they talked about the risk assessments they did at each of our buildings and some of the findings. And we've been working through lists to try to address some of those things that they gave us in the report that might need to be fixed or polished up a little bit. There was also a separate grant for critical incident mapping, and I believe we're about halfway through with the company that is doing that critical incident mapping. So we have to expend the funds from the 97C, 97D this fiscal year, so to say, even though we received the grants last year. Any questions about the grants that we did have? Isn't this fun, Mr. Anton? Yeah. So this year, go ahead. This year's 31AA, which was part of Public Act 103, it's the intent of the legislature that recipients will use at least 50% of the funds and activities related to improving student mental health. They gave us a ballpark. If everyone applied, maybe we'd get such an amount per pupil. Public charters and private schools can access these funds. They have to go through a couple more steps to be able to access them. So we really don't know how much we're going to receive, so we have to put a rough budget in. So we're going to ask for everything we want, and we'll see what we can fund. So our current thoughts for this application that is due, I think it's December sometime. The 2 school social workers that are, their funding is expiring from the 31-0 for next year. We can pay from this year. We'd have to fully fund them. Our thought is to include them in the new 31AA grant. A portion of one of the school social workers who is expiring from ESSER, haven't said ESSER in a while, those grants are expiring this September 30th. Of '24, so we could fund a portion of her. The new early childhood social worker and the new district school psychologist that we hired this fall continued to fund our school nurse, so she's been the consistent one in 31AA. We're going to try for our 2 SROs, so Deputy Lavish from the Macomb Sheriff's Department and Officer Bauer from Romeo Police Department. Our Safe Ed staffing. Our Raptor annual fees, so while we purchase the platform, there's an annual fee contract every year. And then from 97C, we contracted with SEC. We want to include a contract with SEC as follow-up to follow up and give us any feedback on our improvements from their assessment, but also to do some training exercises to design it and then facilitate it around school safety. So right now, those are the current things that we are considering to put in our grant application. And as Dr. Robinson said, part of the grant is to have an opportunity for community feedback. So that's why we're doing this at a public board meeting, because there is public comment at a board meeting. So if anyone heard something and they wanted to comment tonight, they could comment at the public comment in tonight's meeting, or they can email myself or the Superintendent Robinson with any feedback about our plan for 31AA use of funds. That's all I have. Are there any questions?
How much money is the grant if we were to be awarded the full amount?
So I think
What are we looking at?
the
think it
the
depends on
important
how
thing
many
is
apply.
the legislature has accounted for the separate funds other than those one-time 97C and D, and they've allocated the money that represents the original 31AA and the section 97. The
It's about
safety portion of it
yeah.
is, I think, 220 per student, Vicki, is what they told us to form a budget
It's all of
on.
it. They said to look at 220 per pupil.
Okay.
But that's if so the legislature set an amount of money. Depending on how many people apply,
Yep.
we could get more or we could get less. But they said if you were trying to budget $220 per pupil.
And is there a priority, say, for the SROs to be prioritized over one of the many other requests?
Well, the grant states that the intent is that you fund 50% or more around mental health.
And so where does social work fit in with that?
Mental health. So social workers, school psychologists, school nurse all fit under that mental health.
School nurse does, mental health.
They do.
Really? Okay.
So
So,
we're approaching this kind of almost in a 50-50 format. There's some things that we will put in the safety portion of our application that have been funded from the general fund. We took that section 97, having no knowledge if it would be one time or not. And we put it into infrastructure. We believe at this point in time, as we look forward to, the expiring ESSER funds and some of these other state funds being consolidated, that those would be things that, if we have these unique funding for them, we would move these expenditures to that, and then it's just going to allow us to have a clearer path to, remember, we hired as many as 17 positions with ESSER dollars.
Right.
And so the second half of the year, I've mentioned to the board, we have some logistics to do to try and keep all those things. And of course, we need to know if we're going to get an increase from the state and things like that. So for right now, We've got pretty much a 50-50. I think the mental health might just be a little bit more. The interesting piece is, we didn't have to fill out an application for this last year. They told you the allowable expenses, and now there's this application piece that is attempting, I think, to put some accountability to it. And I think what the legislature wants to ensure is people still keep that mental health support in mind with these funds, and not just shift and go do all your safety infrastructure that you don't have and not tend to mental health as well.
I'd like to know, and we'll get to this, but the success rate on all of the mental health support that we've added and post. I'd like to know how we're doing in the district as far as how are students responding? Have we seen better behavior? Have we seen any changes whatsoever if the students are responding to all of this money that we're putting into and the support staff that we're getting, which is a wonderful thing. But if we're responsible for now funding, say we don't get this money, and now we have 2 social workers that we are responsible to pay in full for next year, because we're getting 33% this year. I'd like to know what the success is. And this isn't an immediate thing. This is, I'm assuming we're going to have many more conversations about this grant and the money and where it's going to go amongst the board.
Yeah,
To
I
the
think the
decisions
first
that we
thing is, we get our application in and we hear what we're
Yeah.
actually awarded.
First things first.
And then from there, we can get very actual on the expenditures, and certainly leading up to the budget building process, next spring into
Yeah.
a June approval, we're going to count line item by line item for
Yeah,
this.
I think that's really important that we're very much actively involved in where the grant money is going, and I think the public should be a part of that too. I like the idea of the public comment and where our students' parents and caregivers think that our money should be allocated more towards, because they're boots on the ground at home. So, okay. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
How does the SRO, I'm assuming they're funded through other sources and we're hoping to possibly move them over to this grant? Is that how we should look at it, or no?
We've paid for them out of the general fund up to this point in time. This just gives us we could have moved them under Section 97, but those expenses to align our interior thumb turn hardware and the two-way radio network, the antenna work and the repeaters and the actual radios, those were all, top of the list recommended allowable expenditures. So we took care of the infrastructure. And it isn't that our SROs cannot remain they can remain in the general fund. This money is earmarked for that. If you read the list of allowable expenses, they're in the top 2 or 3.
I just don't want the community to, read that and at a glance and think, oh, okay, if we don't get the money, that funding goes
No.
away, so.
One more thing, I'd also like to know the list of who is allocated in the grant towards mental health in our kids. Social work, school nurse for some reason. I'd like to know is there a job description? Is there a list of things that they're responsible to provide to the students? Or is it just, this is included, school nurse, nothing? So what exactly is the school nurse, for instance, providing in the way of mental health? I'd like to know a little bit more detail.
I think you have to understand that school nurse dollars were in a specific fund. Prior, the legislature has consolidated them and told the MDE, this is the line item. All these allowable expenses from these 3 or 4 different funds are now under one. The
I
nurse
understand.
falls under 31AA.
So their job hasn't necessarily changed.
I understand where it falls with legislature. I'd like to know where it falls with us.
It's the same. It's
So
point.
the school
It's
nurse
just
isn't
it's-
providing mental health to our children. It's just
Well,
where
I
it
think
falls
everybody-
under
I think
31AA.
any adult who serves children in a school district, at some point in time, you could say mental health. I could tell you my mom is a bus driver, helped
Yeah,
them kids,
that's kind of
right?
not what I'm
But-
talking about, though.
But it is in a way because they're already funded, right? They were in these three, it's just
We're just
it's pots
putting-
of money
We're
that
putting
are
this
now
into this
merged.
category, so we're dividing up
We're
into
not.
categories.
The
No, no, no.
legislature has said you can now put it over there.
Yeah, I understand
And it
that.
has the title of that. I just wouldn't get that hung up on it.
Well, I
because
am hung up
wouldn't
on it.
think that their daily job is probably not any different than it was. Minus we're not doing COVID checks anymore and all that other.
Correct. The school nurse works with, students who may have
Lice,
significant
strep.
Oh, I know what they do.
diabetes, right?
I
Have
know what they do. I
significant
just-
health issues that cause them to not maybe be able to attend school, or they are attending school and she ensures that they remain in school.
I mean, you could put the label of mental health professional onto literally anybody.
The legislature did that with the school nurse.
Yeah, I see that. I
That's
see
the
that.
point.
So that's a problem with legislature, which is a problem with government in general. So, okay, thank you.
And I would like to add, I don't know if it is going to be specific to the bond, but maybe it comes next year when we have this conversation. But I think Catherine brings up a great point. When we're speaking about this, we should be having these discussions as a board by, yes, education is why we're here, but safety is number one for me personally. And on top of that, I'd like to mention our SROs have been phenomenal throughout our community. Yes, they are officers, but they are a safe space for students to go to, as well as faculty sometimes. I was at an event Friday, and I was reminded of the level of work that these SROs do for our school district. I'm not going to get into specific details, but it was at a different facility or something, and we were applauded by the work of our SRO that responded to the situation. So for me personally, I know I'm only one voice on this board, but I would like to see a potential expansion with our SROs specifically, and by the recommendation of their national association, it comes into play that there should be one present every building. Does Romeo maybe need that? No. But I would like to see an increase because surely off the success rate we've had with Deputy Labish and Officer Bauer. Thank you.
I agree.
Anything else?
Not yet.
I'd just clarify that that would fall under a budget talk, less on bond, because bond can't be salaries. So just for the audience to remember,
Yeah, yeah, right.
yes. So that would be during budget time when you're starting to allocate.
But we were talking
Budgets.
about the grant.
No,
I
what
was
Chris
talking
said
about
was
the
when
grant.
bond, I just wanted to make sure people, we can't do
Understood.
salaries during bond.
I'm also aware of that. That's why I said it may not be applicable at
Budget.
this moment.
I think budget's going to be when it's applicable. Anything else on 31AA? So again, the take home is for the audience to know that if they have feedback.
If they're watching the recording, please reach
To-
out to myself or Dr. Robinson by email to give us feedback on our proposed plan.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's me. Good evening, everybody. We have an academic services update for you. Elementary goes first. Friday was the end of our first trimester. It's hard to believe that we are a third of the way through the school year. We have parent-teacher conferences this week on Wednesday and Thursday, and our moms and dads at the elementary level will get to see our latest version of our report card. It's in progress, right, with a shift from the edu jargon standards that have existed on there to more I can statements, which are also standards-based, but just a little easier to understand. We went through the process of overhauling ELA and specials this year, and then we'll complete that work in the spring and have a new report card filled with I can statements in the fall of '24, which is exciting. Teachers have helped with that tremendously, and we'll be leaning on them to continue, or help us continue that process. Progress related to CKLA has been really, really good. Teachers, I think, are beginning to settle in. I've talked about the significance of the change just for them because it is different than the approach that they've had for the last several years. And so we've worked with our teachers union to gather feedback around where some of the pinch points are for teachers. You know, we're not in the buildings all the time, and so it's and teaching the lessons, obviously, and so it's difficult for us to know, you know, at a micro level, maybe where some of the struggles are. And so we've had some nice consultation with the REA and have been able to we've provided an FAQ document for teachers. So as questions have come in, we've been able to address them and send them back out. That's a live document that just continues to be fed as needed. We are able to, again, work with the teachers to have PD on November 1st. That was pretty awesome. In reality, they met with a CKLA rep in grade level bands for the morning, for an hour in the morning, kind of learning how to plan not only a lesson within CKLA, I mean, obviously they know how to do that, but tips and tricks from an expert, right, from the vendor, and then, you know, plan out units. And then they had the opportunity to just sit at grade levels and collaborate. Time that they don't typically get across the district. And so they were able to have collaboration time actually in the morning and also in the afternoon, which I think was very well received. And, you know, they can probably teach each other better than we can teach them based on their successes and failures within the classroom. And so that was awesome. And then the last piece tonight for me is just related to elementary furniture. Our round two, if you will, of gen ed furniture is getting ready to ramp up. Working with principals to get a little bit of feedback about the implementations at Washington, Amanda Moore, and Hevel. And we will, you know, over the summer and into the fall, have new gen ed furniture at Hamilton Parsons and Indian Hills, along with new furniture for our Hamilton Parsons addition, which I think is coming tomorrow morning, and hopefully will be assembled in time to have, you know, everything put together for our showcase that's happening on Wednesday and Thursday night for HP parents. So, questions for me? All right, thanks.
So some updates from our secondary teams. We are continuing the Romeo Middle School Transformation Master Planning. We had our Master Planning Day 2 earlier this month. And our third Master Planning session, hopefully we'll finish it up, will be on December 14th. We've had about 50 people attend. We started in August, so we've had people join us all 4 times. So it's pretty exciting to see some of the community members and some business partners, but work in the nonprofit lens as their extra job, so to say. And we have kids there and teachers and parents, so it's been really energizing. Our district technology team met recently, I think it was last month, and we made a decision on our interactive classroom boards. We're going to go with the Promethean board. Thank you, Mr. Antoine. And we'll start with elementaries with installation this summer. Probably not all of them at once. Mr. Nelson and the principals and I will work on installation, but we'll start with those elementary classrooms first. We are sending a team to the McCall and MVU Artificial Intelligence Conference, which is at the Kellogg Center in December. That's a hot topic. We had a few people attend. There was something at South Campus at Macomb, so 2 of our STEM teachers attended and reported back. We had Justin, I think it's Bruno from MVU, come and present to our district tech team, so we're just trying to learn all about that. The kids all know about it, and we're just trying to learn what we can to make sure that we do what's best for our staff and our students. November 1st, professional development, the high school team in the morning, they went and visited community partners, and they each of the SLC teams, so 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade from each of the 3 academies have an interdisciplinary project, and they met with a business partner about how they could support the teachers. And then one of the projects is pretty cool. BEI 12 is partnering with Blake's, and they're going to work with Blake's to create a product, not a beverage, a food product that they'll sell at Blake's and they'll sell in our store. So our kids will market it, our kids will cost things out. So that team of teachers is really excited about that. And then there's a couple other ones that, right now they're on the ground floor, but we're excited to see what happens from those discussions. And then the middle school, we had a guest presenter, Jack Burkmeyer, and he worked with the middle school team in the morning and afternoon around effective teaming practices. And he was able to do a keynote for all of our secondary staff. The high school teams came to the middle school, and then they worked in the cafeteria in the afternoon. And he is a former middle school teacher, but he's also a comedian. And I had quite a few middle school staff members say that was the best PD that they've had. I had some email follow-ups. I think we earned some cred with the REA president. She enjoyed herself. So it was a great day. And the next day, some of our middle school teams already implemented some of the things that he suggested. So I guess when you tell jokes, they follow you. So we'll talk about how we can maybe get them back next year. And then just a recap of the Academy Advisory Board meeting that was last Thursday. Really great feedback for our teachers about what we're doing with our students. The meal was outstanding. So just another kind of highlight of the work that the teams do up there. And just want to give them a kudos to everything that they did. That's all I have.
Any questions?
Just a thank you. I know putting PD together to make it relevant for the masses is a difficult job, so thank you. It sounded like it was successful.
It was, like everyone. It was good. Thanks.
So a few things in my report tonight. We've got a resolution on the agenda to call for election to renew two of our important millages, leveraging the opportunity now that the presidential primary was voted to be moved from August to February. This had some strings attached to it based on when the legislature adjourns, sine die. So they have announced that, and that makes it formal that they will adjourn with a 90-day window to make that law effective on February 12th. So the presidential primary is now going to be held on February 27th. So the first of our millages, just a quick overview, and we're putting together a lot more informational resources. I'll do a little bit more in-depth presentation at our December meeting, but we're renewing the previously approved 1.25 mils millage that was last approved in November of 2019. That was a 5-year renewal. This will also be a 5-year renewal. If you were on the board back then, or you remember, at that time, we made the decision to put these millages together and bring them to the voters consistently every 5 years in an attempt to not be going out to the voters, any more erratically than we need to, but with a strategic plan. So 5-year renewal. The current millage expires in December of '24, so this July will be our last levy. The sinking fund generates about $3.4 million per year for our facility assessment needs, technology, student devices, and instructional technology. We allocate some money to emergency repairs, and the legislature passed a bill that actually will now in the future include transportation and bus purchases within the sinking fund. They've been trying to do that for a couple decades. And actually got that approved. We would not be able to use funds on our current millage. We have to renew in order to get access for the ability for transportation as well. This levy is assessed on all properties and is subject to a Headley rollback. And we're currently in a rollback to 1.21 mils that caps the amount of money that we can get under this millage. So that's our sinking fund that we have on the resolution tonight. The other millage that is up for renewal is our non-homestead operating millage. Once again, this will be with board approval, will be on the ballot at the February 27th presidential primary. We're renewing the previous voter-approved 19.5 mills millage. This was actually in November of '21, so some board members might remember we approved this in 2019 and then we're subject to a significant rollback. So we went back to the voters in '21 and renewed and restored this, but we only did that for 4 years so we could keep the two millages aligned. The current millage expires again in December of '24, and therefore the final levy is this summer. This primary residences are exempted from this millage. This millage is only levied on businesses, second homes, and vacant property, once again subject to Headley rollback. Our non-homestead millage will generate $9.8 million this year. That's approximately 12% of our general fund. The state of Michigan under Proposal A set up this formula where 18 mills needs to come from non-homestead and 6 mills is provided by the state. If we don't keep our non-homestead millage renewed and active, the state does not make up the difference. So funding for this is for operational costs. That's why you'll hear it referred to at times as the operating millage. So we'll put some additional informational items together. With board approval, we'll open up the election tab on our website tomorrow. There's FAQs, the ballot language and things like that. And we'll be doing some other specialized communications over the next couple months leading up to the election date. We also intend to provide comprehensive information on the changes in voting because this presidential primary will be the first time that jurisdictions will be able to offer 9-day in-person voting. So you'll be able to come to the polls as much as 9 days prior to Election Day to cast your ballot as you want. So there'll be some new information on that and we'll make sure that's available. Any questions from the board on either of those millages? I know we've talked quite a bit about them with the Finance Committee and that. So a bond projects update. We heard we're in Group 2 now. We have the approval of the Amanda Moore and Washington additions and the Hevel STEM room renovation, as Mr. Antoine said. We also have a resolution for the new varsity baseball, new varsity and JV softball fields right outside here to the east. This also includes, as I mentioned, the relocation of the field event areas to just behind the high jump pit and pole vault area on the other side of Barnable Field at the high school. Looking ahead to December, we've got another batch of significant projects with the STEM and robotics facility on the RMS campus, and then also that redesign of the athletic facility there once we get the baseball field moved, and we've got tennis courts over here. We've got a great plan to build a middle school track and grass football field so that our middle school can hold all their events on site and not have to be over here for competition at Barnable Field. This also includes the reconfiguration of the parking lot and drives on the north side of the building, or the back of the building, sometimes we refer to it. So there's a significant change to the entire back of the middle school facility with this project. And then we also have a Croswell site work project coming in, phase 1, and that's for the playground behind the new Croswell renovation and new addition. So those will be coming in December, and then the final piece of Group 2 will be in January, and that's health and safety with the water bottle filler drinking fountains and some work at the administration building. So that's kind of a look forward with bond projects. One of the things that we discussed in the facilities committee is that's becoming a reality as we take in these significant projects is escalation. And we're seeing 30 to 40% increases. The board remembers we developed our Treasury app in 2021 and went to the Department of Treasury in June of 21 for approval. Working with Barton Mallow and French Associates, our architect, I think we built in the right amount of escalation at that time, maybe in that 18% range is what we were seeing, and since then, things have continued to increase. We had some additional funds and savings from the 2016 bond that allowed us to kind of insulate those Group 1 projects, but we've spent those funds, and now we're purely on available funds from this bond application. So some of the things that we're discussing, we've had some preliminary discussion here with the board at the Committee of the Whole, is prioritizing financial commitment to projects. And so some of our projects are interconnected. Some of our projects happen over 2 groups, but require the need for some fidelity. So we have to prioritize those projects that we do want to see to full completion as intended. And then we also have to look at prioritizing some projects that maybe we have to make some decisions to partial fund or modify the funding. And then that ultimate thing you never want to do with a bond issue is to place projects on hold for a later date as we see the rest of the bids come in, or potentially a future bond. This is a little difficult because we did so well on the 2016 bond, and this is just a different story due to the escalation in that. We're still dealing with material cost increases and lead times and things like that, but overall, any district that's in construction bond work will tell you they're experiencing this and having to make these decisions. So we'll engage the board on that. We'll engage our leadership team, and in some cases our specialized end users that we do planning and design with. Our Group 3 and 4 project analysis, I'm planning to complete in between December and February because we have important decisions to make on what we're going to design in Group 3 and what we're going to bring to the board, of course, by next fall for approval for the summer of '25. Facilities assessment realignment, we're knee-deep in that, and we had been working on that for about the last 6 months, but wanted to really make sure we were intentional and fine-tune that with sinking fund renewal, because we want to talk about the projects that are intentionally designed with that renewal, especially in the first few years. So we're auditing our facilities assessment, which was originally done in 2019 and then reauthorized in 2021 when we went out for the 21 bond. And we're auditing that and updating that again with a 2023 update. That's looking at completed bond projects that take things off that facilities assessment list, completed sinking fund projects. And then we also have found what I call urgent needs. So there's things that weren't on our radar when we've done those last 2 that are since. And so they're a priority need and they're things that need attention. So we wanna consider those in the funds that we have to allocate. And then if you remember, our original project had some things that were 7 to 10 years out that are now 5 to 7 years out. And so some of those long-term things that still had shelf life are now becoming more a reality. But we've also completed some projects that were in that short-term 1 to 3, and we need to balance that and make sure that we're able to spend the funds that we have where they're most needed. We're just simply going to align the funding with our needs and be able to make strategic decisions. This can also interface with the bond, the remainder of the bond projects, and any future bond. Any questions on that? We'll keep the board updated. First and foremost, the facilities subcommittee will be a little bit deeper into this work. But when the time comes, if that doesn't align with our March study session, then we'll call a facilities committee meeting of the whole and invite everyone to come in to be a part of that conversation. Last couple things I have, we're coming, believe it or not, to the end of year 1 of the implementation of our strategic plan. If you remember, the board approved the plan last January. We took the balance of the first quarter to make some detailed action plans. And then we've been working on those. So we'll be working with the district leadership team actually at our meeting this Wednesday to finalize year one progress reports. We'll share those with you in a presentation at our December 11th meeting. And then we'll go to work on developing our year two action plans. There are some initiatives or activities that we didn't get all the way through in year one. Those would naturally carry over to year two, but there's also next steps to things based on our year one work. The other thing we found in year one is that we have some goal areas within different focus areas that are kind of crossing over each other. So we're going to remove duplicate efforts at the end of year one here and say if this student activities things work is living in two focus areas, it's going to live in one, and that group will intentionally see it through. So we have a couple of things that we think are represented in two different focus areas, and we just want to create efficiency and actually have one team take that over and work on that. And then finally, believe it or not, it's coming up on 2 years from our school climate survey that we put out in February of 2022. So we're in process with reauthorizing that survey and working to take that survey and align it where we can with the strategic plan, and then developing an administration plan to hopefully be able to put that out and administer the 2.0 version of this to collect data in December, and then be able to analyze the results, share those with the board and parents in the community a little earlier than we did last year. We ran out of time prior to the end of the year last year to get all the way to building level discussion. And so that's why we're hoping to administer a little early this time so that our school administrators can have time in the spring to work with their staff on the results. There's a few questions in there that the results clearly represented that probably wasn't a good question because we got the result overwhelmingly that we thought we would get. But there's also, based on the strategic plan, a couple of new questions that we're going to include for specific stakeholder groups to make sure we're getting the feedback we desire. The other thing that we're going to do with this administration is our elementary students will actually, their open-ended responses will actually be collected in focus groups. So we're going to meet with groups of students at our elementary buildings and work through discussion around those questions. We feel that will be better to take them a little deeper, so we don't just hear gym in recess. You know, we can honor that gym in recess, but we can also go and talk a little bit more detail. Well, what does that mean? Or when they tell us the lunch menu, well, what do you mean when you say the lunch menu? So we think that'll create an efficiency in the students completing the survey, but we'll also get better data by talking to student groups that are representative of 3rd through 5th grade level. Questions on either of the strategic plan?
This survey for 6th grade and up go out to all students?
Yeah.
And then the survey will be to all parents?
Yes.
Regardless, okay.
Yeah. So we'll survey staff first, so they get a chance to refresh their memory on that, so they're prepared, and then we will launch the parent survey in a series of days for students to complete it at the same time.
So the individual stakeholders, and then the couple of questions that we're going to give to them. I think we've discussed this already. It was, we were going to give surveys to individual groups. Is that right? I think we had mentioned, like, the Honor Society was going to get, we were going to
No, I think you're talking about this focus group, like student voice groups.
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
To get a desired result, I really want to avoid confirmation bias. And so picking random groups, we kind of talked about this, but just, I guess for the public to know, just, we want to make sure that we collect data from different groups, sort of all over the spectrum.
Representative groups.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
Is this the same survey that we gave once before, or
Yes.
exactly
With the
the same
change of a
survey?
couple questions that we're working through potentially not asking again, And then I think it'll be 3 or 4 questions specific to the strategic plan. And I believe 4 questions specific to the parent group and 2 questions to all 3 groups. So as soon as we have that work done, I'll certainly share that with the board. But part of our goal is that this is a re-surveying to see, you know, our growth and on our action plan for that in the areas that we targeted that needed attention from the first
It
time.
might be a good opportunity to maybe include, since we're administering a survey, how well our mental health resources are affecting our children right out of their mouth. How well? How do you feel about, you know, the addition of, not specific, but to gauge how they feel and if it's beneficial or not. Sort of along the same lines that we touched on a little bit earlier. If we have this really amazing opportunity to ask the student body and their parents questions, we might want to think about just adding, you know, I don't even know if that's included in the questionnaire. It might already be.
Could that also be a piece for teachers as well? You know,
I would agree with that
that
too.
might
Yeah.
be specific, like, to gen ed teacher, you know, I don't know if you can
Do
extrapolate
you
that
feel
out,
like
but, you
there's
know,
been an improvement in behavior or attendance?
or any,
whatever.
you know, interventions that have been brought in? How does staff feel about it?
To reinvent the whole survey doesn't
No,
give
no,
us
no.
that baseline data, but I think the
But
key
we
is,
could.
if there's specific things that we want to survey, this isn't the only time we can ask those questions. I think the key here is we had questions built in that led us to making decisions about adding additional resources. If in fact those resources have had an impact and we ask the same question, then we should see growth in the results from the last time we did it. You know, the specific questions, whether or not a person mentions that or not, we wouldn't control that, but that doesn't mean we can't seek more detailed feedback.
And then
from
how do we
certain
gauge
groups.
growth?
The questions were all geared on level of agreement. So, and those reports still sit on the district webpage to this day, with a breakdown on all groups to all questions. So we'll get this data, we'll go back, and now we can put the data from the first admission to the second administration against each other, and see where we've seen growth, non-growth, maybe new areas.
Which then would lead you, so I don't remember it exactly, but something like this. Let's say you asked a question about that, and it was, 80% was somewhat agree. Something that we did or implemented, and 80% was somewhat agree, but now we get 80% are strongly agree. Or let's say it goes the reverse. Now we can take that question in a different survey in a different way and get to the points that you want. But you kind of want to do the same so you can really look apples to apples and then extrapolate from there, where we might want to do a follow-up survey to be like, at the previous survey, we had heard many of you think school nurses only check for lice. Tell me what else you think they do, or whatever it might be, let's just say. That's just a dumb example, but you know what I'm saying. You kind of want to do, in survey land, you do want to do an apple to an apple for this, for the climate survey, because it is a more subjective
I
climate.
understand that. I
And
just
then
think it's a
would
really
wanna
great
pull out.
opportunity since we're doing this, because people can get surveyed out and just check 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and, across the board, which a lot of people do. I mean, you're going to get some of that too. The people that choose to do the survey will hopefully be honest.
We've actually been very fortunate here, and we do a good job marketing ahead of time, and we do a good job having them do it in school at a session.
I like that
So
because
we
it does
do
matter.
get a good population of someone who's done surveys before. So I think the goal here would be wait and see, refresh yourself with what we asked before, then wait and see what the new questions are, and then we can really decide
Build it
at
out.
that time if, once we see it, if it makes sense to do it in a follow-up way, or if, boy, just one question would get to it, then that's easy peasy.
never
But you
does.
don't want to get to where you alter it too much, then we're not apples to apples, and it deviates from from what we did.
Any other
What's the ti-
questions?
What's the timeline on it coming out? Because you said December, which.
Yeah, right
Oh,
now,
that's already-
we're thinking
that's-
December 1st through 7th, but I'm not sure we'll be able to, a
That would
lot will
be
be
just the
told.
staff first?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. And the administration doesn't take a ton of time. This is a 15 to 20-minute survey. And a lot of our successful follow-up, both with this and with the strategic plan, was done in focus groups, facilitated focus groups, because you get better conversation. So we're as intrigued as about doing something like that than just continuing to put out, surveys.
Who designed the survey?
We worked with Michigan Research Framework and really a collection of a variety of national instruments, and then made it our own. So we spent 2.5 months developing this survey.
No doubt.
Yeah, so this is a little bit easier work, because that work isn't stale. But there's a couple questions in there that it was just like, this isn't worth asking again.
You're gonna share copies, right, with us?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. As long as we're able to extrapolate the data and then build on it, build certain things out, I think that's,
Continuous improvement, right?
yeah, right.
That's all I have.
All right, moving on. Is there anybody wishing to speak at public comment? I didn't receive any. Antoinette? No? Moving on to our regular meeting action. Our first resolution is 86, Employee Services. We have a personnel update in our board packet. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Support.
Moved by Demus, supported by Connor. Any questions on that in your board packet? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We don't have anybody to introduce Dr. Robinson? No. Oh, I keep shrinking that, sorry. All right, moving on to Resolution 87, Business Services. This is our non-homestead and sinking fund renewal.
Motion.
Support?
Moved and supported. Young
Rachel, support.
and Ikorst. Are there any questions or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The next is our Technology Resolution 88, which is our district laptop replacement.
So move.
Support.
Moved by Connor, supported by Antoine. Are there any questions or concerns?
Yes. It says 4 years for a laptop. That's the shelf life? Is that what I understand here?
I'm going to it really fast.
6 years.
Yeah. Well, this is saying the current fleet of Windows laptops are 6 years old and in need of replacement. Some last longer, some. Do you want
Okay.
Mr. Nelson to?
What happens to them? Because they're still good.
Well, you
So what
refurbish them, you use parts. Sometimes they're the loaners. Is there other things, Mr. Nelson?
It depends how long they
Right.
last. I mean, at one point, they get recycled, when they're,
No longer.
Recycled, not reused. Okay,
well, they get reused until the point where,
until they can't be.
yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not,
Wasting money.
wait, well, I mean, if they're still usable, there's been a big problem.
yeah.
Not a big problem, but there's been some talk about, kids not having laptops when they break theirs or whatever, so.
They get a checkout of usually the
If we didn't have a
loaners.
checkout, I think at one point we didn't have enough, and until our order came in, I think we ordered a bunch, so.
Correct.
Okay, just checking.
I would clarify, this is not student Chromebooks. These are actual
This is
district.
different.
Yes, these are Dell laptops.
Dell laptops.
Yes, this is,
For staff.
For staff.
yes,
All staff get a Dell laptop?
no.
No,
Just
for those who travel or work away from the district or work in an environment where a desktop computer is not available.
Yeah, I see that. That's fancy. Okay. Yep, we're good.
All right, we had a move and a support. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm abstaining. Moving on to Facilities Resolution 89, which is our elementary additions and renovation project. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Moved by Ikorst, support by Connor.
Okay.
Questions, comments, concerns? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to Facilities Resolution 90, which is our RHS baseball and softball field project.
Motion.
Moved by Antoine, support by Demus. Questions?
Question. We had talked earlier about the groundwork and about ensuring that with Barton Mallow, it was going to be done, nothing was going to get missed, because we were going to go with the, correct me if I'm wrong, the lower bid?
We typically go with lower bids. What Mike was expressing and what Barton Mallow brought to us is they have a very extensive vetting process, and the group that we are going with was 200 something thousand less.
Yes.
But the one right below it is a very known one that, and I don't even know if that one has done our previous work, if I remember correctly.
No,
And s-
we just had discussion because the lowest bidder on the site work on this project is a vendor that doesn't have extensive background in this. They've done it, but Foresight Design in the bid packet puts a minimum number of projects. So I believe it was a dozen previous projects that were in the RFP, and not all bidders have, it's kind of like if you don't ever get a shot, you can't ever get experience. So we discussed at length places where this group had done site work. This is a little different when you're talking about baseball and softball fields than football stadiums. And ultimately, we had the conversation with the facilities subcommittee because there was extensive conversation that was had follow-up in the post-bid interviews to say, are we comfortable with this lowest bidder? And both Foresight and Barton Mallow said yes. And so the district, the subcommittee supported us moving forward with the lowest bidder
And
at
I
a savings
think
of $200,000.
That was the other part.
I will defer to the experts. Thank you.
Yes.
So Mike and I being on there, we're like, if let's say it was a very small amount, right, yeah, you would go with your known entity. But
200,000
for
is
200,000,
Yeah. I-
that made a lot of sense.
I just
And
wanted to make sure that I understood that.
they have done other fields.
Okay.
So, a really, really fancy one, too.
Excellent.
All right, I have not called this one. We already did our motion, yes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next one is the Business Services 91, which is the termination of the RFP, which that is the 297 Prospect RFP.
Motion.
Support.
I had Demus support, or make the motion, and I had Connor support. And I guess just because this has been such a hot topic, the question is, would you guys like me to read this out loud so it's read into the video? And so I'll hear it. We should pass it first, or does it matter? Read it first, all right. So, whereas the school district's Board of Education voted to close the former Romeo Middle School located at 297 Prospect, Romeo, Michigan, and demolish the former school building located therein, the property. And whereas the school district desired to explore and consider the sale of the subject property, as the property is no longer being used for school purposes and is deemed surplus real property. And whereas on September 26, 2022, Volume 55, Resolution 71, the school district's Board of Education authorized the school district's administration, its legal counsel, Clark Hill PLC, and its real estate consultant, Great Northern Consulting Group, to explore, market, analyze the sale of the property with the understanding that any recommendation to accept an offer or purchase agreement will be brought back before the Board of Education for approval. And whereas the school district, with the assistance of Great Northern Consulting Group and Clark Hill PLC, issued a request for proposal to purchase real property on February 15th, 2023, the RFP. Whereas on March 29th, 2023, in response to the RFP, the school district received 5 proposals regarding the potential purchase of the subject property. And whereas the Board of Education has discussed the process and the proposals at length at many public meetings, and at this time desires to end the RFP process, reject any and all proposals submitted through the RFP process or otherwise, and pause any future RFP process through June 1, 2024, unless a viable offer is brought to the board by community members which the board elects to consider at a public board meeting. Now therefore be it resolved that the school district's Board of Education hereby desires to end the RFP process, reject any and all proposals submitted through the RFP process or otherwise, and pause any future RFP process through June 1, 2024, unless a viable offer is brought to the board by community members which the board elects to consider at a public board meeting. So that is the proposal that, is that the resolution that is on the table to vote. Any questions, comments, or input? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on for board discussion.
I had a couple items for tonight. First off, I attended the Washington Township Veterans Day ceremony that was held Friday. It was a great morning. Don Brown, President of Commissioners from Macomb County, was there, along with Congresswoman Lisa McLean. But the highlight, as pertaining to us, was Audrey Brown. She's a vocalist in our community, and I want to say a RHS student as well. But she sang America and the Pledge of Allegiance, and she did a really great job, well received. The second item I had was very appreciative of the work of the administration and our partners such as Barton Mallow and other surrounding partners pertaining to our facilities and how we're mitigating the higher cost of 30 to 40%. But again, I'm one voice, but this is important to me that if we're going to continue to ask the community for money, I think in the form of communication of just a long research piece or a podcast or whatever it may be, we need to be posting that weekly. We have the position for it, and we should see progress in these buildings. I mean, in 2021, our operating millage passed by 61%, our school improvement passed by 54%, and that was for 87 million. For me, that tells me 40 to 39% of our community is not invested, or they don't even know what's going on in the buildings. And that, those are the residents that may not have a child involved, or may not be able to see those buildings or have an opportunity to go in them all the time. So for me, it's really important that we post a couple pictures a week, and people love a good story of seeing something be transformed. That's why we have so many TV shows and movies about how people change things for the betterment. And the work that is done in this community from this board and the administration and our partners needs to be showcased. And for me, this is something that I would love to see on a weekly basis posted on our socials.
Any other comments at
No,
this end?
I have one.
Oh,
Yep,
okay.
I was waiting for a comment on that. I like that idea. I just wanted to give a shout out to Indian Hills because we have our first Lego League Challenge qualifier for 4th and 5th grade this Saturday. Yep, my team's going, just saying.
Wayne?
And I want to thank everyone for sending me to the leadership conference. I just got back from last night real late, and I learned a lot of important things at the conference. And I'll have a report coming out in the near future, the congressman. I want to thank you for sending me that.
All right, the last thing, and I won't bore everybody, but I'll send an email out tomorrow. We do need to relook at our calendars for the November 30th evaluation meeting, so we can get that. So check your email tomorrow. I'll follow up with a text just to have everybody kind of pipe in and look at your calendar to see if we can't find a different time that week. And I think that is it. Mr. Antoine?
Yep.
Demas, you guys, anything else? All right, moving on. Is there any other public comment? Okay.
I want to thank the board for,
You actually, just if you don't mind,
I know I didn't fill out a sheet, but I just want to thank you.
Hold on.
It was 8 months, and we came to you. You guys acted very professional and factual, and I think we got something done. I think we showed the community that a grassroots movement can work if you stick with professionalism and factual. So thanks again. We got a lot of hard work ahead of us now, but thank you. Thank you.
all right. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, I had Chris Young. Is that a support by you, Mr. Connor? Yes.
Yep.
All
That's
right.
a support.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.